I now give the floor to the representative of Germany.
Madam President, Germany offers its condolences to the people of Turkey on the loss of lives resulting from the massive earthquake on Sunday, and to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the passing away of His Royal Highness Crown Prince Sultan bin Abdelaziz Al Saud. I would like to thank Under-Secretary General Lynn Pascoe for his briefing. And let me mention that Germany obviously aligns itself to the statement that will be delivered later by the European Union. After a long period of standstill in the Middle East peace process, there is reason to hope that the stalemate might be broken by preparatory meetings of the Quartet with the parties on the 26th of this month. As specified by the Quartet, a first step would be to agree on an agenda and method of proceeding in the negotiation. After that, the parties will have to take the next step to come forward with comprehensive proposals on territory and security. As the Quartet also said in its statement, meetings in itself will not establish the trust needed for successful negotiations. And trust is key in order to return to negotiations. In this respect, we are extremely worried about the recent Israeli steps to expand settlement activity. The decision to advance the planning process on thousands of additional housing units in the settlement of Gilo and Givat Hamatos, and plans to legalize illegal outposts within Israeli law undermine the trust that is needed for negotiations. And they are not compatible with roadmap obligations and run counter to the current Quartet efforts. We have called on the government of Israel to dispel any doubts about its interest in serious negotiations. The imperative of trust should also be taken into consideration when looking at the Palestinian application for UN membership. We are mindful of the responsibility entrusted to us in the Commission for the admission of new members. Let me be very clear on this. Germany supports the establishment of a Palestinian state. As a matter of course, such a state will become a member of the United Nations. But it is also our responsibility in this Council to give the Quartet's current efforts and actions the chance to bear fruit. There is no viable alternative to the resumption of negotiations. The two-state solution can only be achieved through a peace agreement between the parties. We want to see the State of Israel and a sovereign, independent, democratic, contiguous and viable State of Palestine living side by side in peace and security. Germany acknowledges the remarkable progress by the Palestinian Authority in building the institution of the future State of Palestine. In their reports, World Bank, IMF and the United Nations have clearly stated that the Palestinian Authority has crossed the threshold towards a functioning state in key sectors. We commend the Palestinian Authority for demonstrating this capability. Now, the political process has to catch up with the progress of state building on the ground. Germany is relieved about the release of Staff Sergeant Gilad Shalit. We hope that the release and the related exchange of prisoners will bring new momentum to the Middle East peace process. In this regard, we believe that now is the time to fully implement Resolution 1860 of this Council, calling for goods and people, for the unconditional opening of crossing for goods and people to and from Gaza, thereby preventing the illicit trafficking of arms and ammunition. Let me now turn briefly to Lebanon. It is with great sadness that we have heard that Judge Antonio Cassese, the first president of the Special Tribunal for Lebanon, passed away last Friday. The loss of this eminent scholar will undoubtedly affect all those who seek accountability and justice. In this context, we would like to recall the statement made by His Excellency Najib Mikati, Prime Minister of Lebanon, to this Council when he reiterated Lebanon's commitment to all its international obligations, including those relating to the Special Tribunal for Lebanon. In spring of this year, Tunisians courageously stood up against an autocratic regime that had repressed them for decades. 9 months later, free elections are taking place in Tunisia for the first time since it gained independence. 90% of those who registered for elections have cast their ballot. This is an impressive number. Peaceful, free and fair elections provide an important role model for countries where the Arab Spring has already made inroads, and offer tremendous encouragement where people take to the streets, seeking to live a better life in freedom and dignity. Germany will continue to actively support Tunisia through its transformation partnership. Let me turn now to Syria. On October 4th, 2 permanent members of this Council vetoed a draft resolution on the situation in Syria that condemned human rights violations, demanded an end to the violence, and called for an inclusive Syrian-led political process. The days which have passed since this vote have shown that the strategy advocated by some to give the Syrian regime more time has failed. Those who had delayed Council action with reference to their bilateral efforts have not delivered. On the contrary, the situation has further deteriorated. In a statement made on October 14th, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Navi Pillay, voiced her disappointment with the inaction of this Council. She reminded the members of the international community to take protective action in a collective and decisive manner before the continual ruthless repression and killings drive the country into a full-blown civil war. Indifferent spectatorship is not an option. We still think that this Council should send a strong message in the form of a resolution. However, we are not going to accept any equidistant approach that suggests that the opposition could be as responsible for violence as is the government. Only the Syrian people can decide on the future of their country, and we therefore welcome the various efforts undertaken by the Syrian opposition to peacefully build a political platform. And in this respect, we note the creation of the Syrian National Council as a positive step forward. We also welcome the efforts undertaken by the Arab League to convince Damascus to enter into a meaningful dialogue with the opposition. The Arab League has set a clear timeline for this dialogue. But it is clear that dialogue has to include all of the opposition, and that there can be no meaningful dialogue as long as repression and killings of demonstrators continue. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Germany for his statement.